I've been a freelance land surveyor for about 15 years. Most of my work is solo remote stuff. I'm usually camping out for days at a time, in places nobody else is going to. I actually prefer it that way. Or at least I used to. This happened about 4 years ago. I'd been hired to survey boundary markers on a parcel up in the mountains near the Clearwater region in Idaho. Remote doesn't even begin to describe it. It was 6 miles of hiking just to reach where I set up camp. With the local ranger station like I always do, and I packed a week's worth of supplies. The first day went smooth. I found 3 markers, logged everything, and made it back to camp before dark. The forecast had called for cold and light snow, and that's pretty much what I got. By the second day though, things started to change. We got way more snow than expected. The next marker was only about a mile out of the way. So, instead of calling it right then and there, I figured, what the hell? That was a mistake. I honestly still think about how stupid it was, not to just hunker down, or make it out of the woods when I had a chance. The terrain was all hidden rocks and icy slopes under fresh snow. So, to translate, the worst possible conditions to hike through. I was picking my way down a short embankment when my boot hit a patch of ice. I never saw. One wrong step like that, and you could die. And I mean that literally. I slid probably 15 feet before catching myself on a tree root. I was lucky not to have slid further, but the pain in my right ankle was instant. I tried to tell myself I was fine, but the moment I stood up, I audibly groaned in pain. I couldn't put much weight on that leg, and I knew it would be a few hours before I'd be able to walk normally. I was so mad at myself, but there was nothing I could do. I abandoned the rest of the work right there. No markers worth getting stranded over. I painfully made my way back uphill to the main trail and started the slow hike back toward camp. But after a few minutes, I noticed boot tracks on the trail, which seemed to have come from further into the woods on my left. They were heading in the same direction I was going, and they looked somewhat fresh, which I could tell by how sharp the edges were, despite the fact that it was snowing. I figured it was probably a hunter, or maybe someone from the landowner's crew, checking on the property. It's not unusual to cross paths with people out there, even in remote areas. I didn't think much of it. I just kept moving, trying to keep as much weight off my ankle as possible. As the light started fading, I began hearing sounds behind me. At first, I chalked it up to normal forest noises, but the more I listened, the more it sounded like footsteps. I kept turning around and looking over my shoulder, but I couldn't see anything. That part of the forest was pretty dense though, so if there were any animals stalking me or something, there's a good chance that I wouldn't have been able to see it. Anyway, I stopped walking, and the sound stopped too. Not right away. There was a delay of maybe 1 or 2 seconds, but they stopped. I froze up and tried to listen for anything out of the ordinary, but there was nothing beyond the wind and snow. I started walking again, and this time, the footsteps didn't resume. So I thought everything was good. But then a few minutes later, I heard those damn footsteps again. I kept turning around, but I couldn't see anything. It was especially freaky, because I knew I wouldn't be able to run if there was a threat out there. That was the worst part. I would have loved to investigate, or try to scare off whatever animal was stalking me, but I didn't have the mobility to do so. So I just kept moving. But then I heard something metallic off to my left. I don't really know how to describe it. It was this low sound, like something lightly hitting a fence post or a piece of equipment. It was freaky, because there wasn't supposed to be anything but trees out there. So I had no idea what could be making a metallic sound of all things. The sounds must have distracted me, because it dawned on me that I hadn't been keeping track of those footprints I noticed earlier. I looked down and realized they were gone. I turned around frantically, but I couldn't see when they had branched off, or if they had turned around or something. I kept looking to my left, trying to see through the trees, so I could at least spot whatever had made the sound. My eyes locked onto something, and the alarm bell started going off in my brain. There was another set of footprints coming out of the tree line on my left, running parallel to mine through the snow. They weren't that far away, which was the most concerning part. Whoever had been ahead of me on that trail was now walking alongside me through the trees. At that point, I was so scared that I wasn't thinking straight. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have just kept going. But instead, I spoke up, asking if anyone was there. I didn't get an answer, and after about 20 seconds of waiting, I knew I had to get out of there. But my stupid ankle was still killing me, so I couldn't move that fast. I wanted to run, or at least jog, but I couldn't. I was pretty close to camp though, so I just told myself, if I kept moving, I'd be fine. I wasn't hearing footsteps behind me anymore, which was good. But I knew there was someone out there, someone who had been ahead of me at one point, which did make sense. I was really close to my sight when I heard the sound of a heavy branch snapping from somewhere behind me. It obviously wasn't a natural sound, or I wouldn't bother mentioning it. I didn't stop moving. I kept thinking about how if I just made it back, I'd be good. And eventually, I did reach my campsite. It was fully dark at that point, and only after getting inside my tent did I realize I wasn't any safer in there than I had been hobbling through the woods. I started packing immediately. My stupid foot made it so hard to move quickly, but I tried my best to rush. I'd say maybe 60% of how scared I was due to the fact that in a fight or a chase, I would be completely screwed without the ability to move properly. Before I finished packing, I heard the thing that I had been dreading the whole time. Footsteps, right outside the tent. I was so unbelievably scared at that point, and I started thinking about all the options. The footsteps weren't approaching my tent, but rather circling it. There was nothing I could do but wait for them to charge my tent. The sounds of them circling went on for what felt like 5 minutes before everything went quiet. I hadn't heard whoever was out there walk away, but I didn't care. I was leaving, person or not. I finished packing and took a really deep breath before unzipping my tent and stepping out into the snow. The moment I got outside, I looked into the trees and screamed. There was a guy standing in the tree line staring at me. He was really old and sickly, almost like he was dying. He looked disgusting. I stared back at him. I was fully expecting him to charge me, but he didn't. I put my hands up and said, "I don't want no trouble," and he didn't respond. I didn't know what to do. The staring contest lasted a few minutes before he said something I still think about. He said, "You're a lucky man," then turned and disappeared into the woods. The rest of that night is pretty blurry, partly because I was still in so much pain, and partly because of the encounter. If that guy wanted to fight me or kill me, he probably could have with my ankle all messed up. There would have been nothing I could have done. I finished packing and left, not even caring about it being dark. When I eventually got checked out, I was told I had severely sprained my ankle, and it was a miracle I hadn't messed it up worse by walking. I ended up reporting that freak in the woods, but I know nothing was going to come of it. I didn't take another winter contract for almost a year. I still do remote work. It's my livelihood, and I'm good at it, but I don't camp alone on winter assignments anymore. I either bring someone with me, or I turn the job down. This is still the scariest thing that has ever happened to me.